Hello, this is Lisa, CEO of Site for Wight, welcoming you to this week's Talking News on Saturday, the 10th of December 2022. It was so lovely to meet so many members this week at our mince pie and mulled wine open morning on Wednesday. Both volunteers, trustees, staff and members all joined together for a glass or two of mulled wine and some mince pies. A huge thank you to Tesco's, Asda and Morrison's here on the island who donated the mince pies to us. It was lucky we had all three supermarkets donating because they were all eaten up by the members. With just one more week to go before Millbrook House closes for Christmas next Friday, there is a very busy atmosphere in the office as everybody is trying to get things finished this side of Christmas. Finally, it's a save the date. We will be holding a Site for Wight New Year lunch on January the 17th at the Isle of Wight College. If you would like to join us, please don't hesitate to call the office on 522205. Wishing everybody season's greetings. Thank you, Lisa, CEO, Site for Wight.
This is Alison, reading an article from the Isle of Wight Radio entitled Isle of Wight Patient Transport Fears as Council Funding Cut Looms. Funding for patients travelling to the mainland for medical treatment could be cut as the Isle of Wight Council issues a dire warning about its finances. In previous years, the authority has given £60,000 a year to the Isle of Wight NHS Trust to help fund the travel scheme for cancer patients. The scheme has been running for 16 years, providing reimbursement of ferry costs. But Cabinet Member for Adult Social Care, Councillor Carl Love, has issued a severe warning it could be axed. Speaking at the Isle of Wight Council's Health and Social Care Scrutiny Committee last night, Monday, Councillor Love said the Council had been happy to support the scheme previously, but looking forward, the cost pressures to adult social care were so significant that the scheme is under consideration of being cut. He said, "It may only be in the region of £60,000, but it is against a budget deficit of millions, and we are facing real issues about that." Councillor Love said he knew as soon as the scheme came under consideration, there would be a significant wave of feeling from people using it, but the Council needed to be clear it was at risk. The Council, he said, gives the funding voluntarily, but was mindful of the knock-on effect it would have on the NHS down the line if it was withdrawn. A patient transport task force has been launched, created to address the issues facing those who have to travel to the mainland for treatment. The task force is set to meet later this week, after winter pressures saw the first meeting cancelled. Councillor Vanessa Churchman said it was all very well everything being centralised, but it totally ignores the enormous amount of travelling everyone has to do. The Isle of Wight Council also runs a scheme where those parking in specific car parks in Ryde and Yarmouth who are travelling for medical treatment can claim the cost back. The authority has recently warned of the pressures it will face setting a budget next year and the need to fill a £22 million hole.
This is an article from Isle of Wight Radio, read by Terry. Mottiston Gardens to hold free Christmas fun palace. A free Christmas fun palace will be held at the National Trust's Mottiston Gardens next weekend. Following on from the success of its first ever Fun Palace in October, the Trust will be opening the gates for free admission between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. on Sunday, December the 11th, so visitors can take part in a day of festive crafting. Working with local community groups, the charity is welcoming everyone to create something special to them. There'll be workshops to make Christmas decorations and cards, woodcraft with Bryston men in sheds, time jump histories, telling stories from the trenches of Christmas Day 1914, festive story time for little ones, and Bryston Primary School choir filling the air with song. In addition, the National Trust van will be serving warming drinks and mince pies. There'll be Christmas items for sale, and there's an opportunity to take a photo in a special Christmas sleigh. This is all set against the backdrop of the beautiful gardens, where anyone from child to adult can use their imagination and creativity to try something new or share their skills. Senior Volunteering and Community Officer Dee said, "We have an amazing Christmas event planned. We hope the magical setting of the beautiful gardens will provide inspiration as individuals and community projects come together to provide an abundance of craft activities for everyone to enjoy. Come and join us this festive season and put your heart into art." Fun Palaces support local people to co-create their own cultural and community events across the UK and worldwide. Each year they run a Fun Palaces weekend of celebration on the first weekend in October to share and celebrate the genius in everybody.
This is Den reading an article from the Island Echo. Triplets from Royal Victoria Yacht Club win prestigious British Yachting Award. 22-year-old identical triplets Tom, Harry and Charlie Wight have clinched the title of Young Sailor of the Year at the British Yachting Awards. Their nomination for this award came after their recent success in this year's Cows Week in their squib, Kestrel, winning the overall under-25 team and Musto Young Skippers trophies, plus finishing a strong third place in the squib class. The British Yachting Awards event, sponsored by Sailing Today and Yachts and Yachting, and hosted by professional sailor Hannah Diamond, took place on Monday, the 28th of November, at the Royal Thames Yacht Club in Knightsbridge. Chris Rickman, Commodore of the Royal Victoria Yacht Club, where the triplets are members, has said, "This is a totally outstanding achievement, and we couldn't be more delighted for them and a very proud mum, Angie." The boys started sailing at RVYC as cadets and worked their way up through laser racing and onto the squib class in their boat Kestrel. Their success is a reflection of what a thriving environment we have here at RVYC, where we encourage our younger members in particular to get out on the water and enjoy our sport. We're also a very family-oriented. Not only have we now got children of former cadets sailing, but grandchildren of members too. Speaking about the win, Harry has said, "Sailing has very much brought us three all together as we keep our competitive and team spirits alive through sport. Furthermore, our experiences have allowed us to give back to our friends and the club, who have such a profound positive impact on our lives, and I think this nomination embodies that sense of community and achievement. Without the support from our friends at the Royal Victoria Yacht Club over the years, we would never have been in this situation. We would like to thank all those who have always shown us tremendous support and thank everyone who voted for us."
Hello, this is Steve reading a story from Isle of Wight Radio, headlined "Council Told to Toughen Up Stance on Chillerton and Rupley Primary School." The Isle of Wight Council has been told it will need to toughen up and make a decision on the future of the island's smallest school. From January, there will be no teacher at Chillerton and Rupley Primary School, meaning the 10 children at the school will have to find alternative education arrangements. No applications have been received to fill the vacancy, despite advertising the role, and pupil numbers have continued to decline. The future of the school has twice been in danger before, although under the Council's Alliance administration, the authority has made it clear school closures should be avoided where possible. The Isle of Wight Council has said it was not a school closure and pupils could remain on the roll of Chillerton and Ripley Primary but be educated at Godshill, its partner school under the Stenbury Federation. However, parents of pupils at Chillerton and Ripley have said they are refusing to move their children, citing their right under the Education Act for their child to be educated in accordance with their parents' wishes. Speaking at the Education Scrutiny Committee last night, that's Thursday, Councillor Debbie Andre, Education Lead Member, said the authority did not have any alternatives. She said, "I have a duty and responsibility to ensure those children have a suitable education, but it is not just about learning. To have such small numbers with differing ages, it has got to a point where I can no longer say that is an acceptable or suitable education. We are not closing the school. We are saying we can no longer continue." The Isle of Wight Council launched a strategic review earlier this year to resolve the issues of surplus places in island primary schools. Under the strategic review, the Council is now consulting on whether to reduce the number of pupil places at 4 other schools. The issue of Chillerton and Ripley, however, could go on indefinitely until the school hires a new teacher, the committee heard yesterday. Councillor Martin Oliver said at some stage the Council would need to make the uncomfortable decision. He said, "A school with no pupils and no teachers is an empty building. I know no one wants to say we have to close it, but as a council, we have to make a decision. We don't need the spaces and we won't for the foreseeable future." Councillor Andre agreed with the sentiment, but said the council needed to do its due diligence before they took a decision, so it would be the right one for island children.
This is Alison reading an article from the Island Echo entitled "High Rates of Scarlet Fever on the Isle of Wight. Here's what you need to know." Parents are being urged to be on the lookout for symptoms and seek medical advice if they suspect their child has a Strep A infection, as the Isle of Wight NHS Trust confirms that there are high rates of suspected scarlet fever cases on the island at present. The NHS says it is important that children with scarlet fever are seen by their GP so that they can be started on antibiotics. It is also important they are kept at home for 24 hours after the start of the antibiotic treatment to avoid spreading the infection. Scarlet fever, which is caused by group A strep bacteria, is much more common in children than in adults, but can be equally as devastating for both age groups. Strep A usually only causes a mild sore throat and temperature, but it can be life-threatening. What to look out for? The rash of scarlet fever often begins with small spots on the body that then spread to the neck, arms and legs. It is often sandpaper-like to touch, but it is not itchy. Children may also have a sore throat or tonsillitis, a fever, painful and swollen glands in the neck, and a red tongue. The infection is spread by physical contact or through droplets from sneezing or coughing. If you suspect scarlet fever or invasive group A streptococcal infection, then you should call your GP or NHS 111, as prompt treatment with antibiotics can prevent serious illness and stop the spread of infection. You should call 999 if your child is having difficulty breathing, grunting noises, tummy sucking under their ribs, if there are pauses when your child breathes, if they are floppy or will not wake or stay awake, or if your child's skin, tongue or lips are blue. Deaths in recent days. A total of 9 children have recently died as a result of Strep A, including a child in nearby Waterlooville. 851 cases of scarlet fever were recorded in the week leading up to the 20th of November, a number thought to have increased since. It is known that locally there has been a confirmed case at Summerfield Primary School in Newport. What is the cause? It is thought that a lack of mingling among children during the COVID lockdowns, and therefore a lack of exposure to bacteria, has led to the outbreak developing. The last outbreak was between 2017 and 2018, when 4 children died in the same period. Currently, there is no evidence that a new strain is circulating. What is being done? The UK Health and Security Agency is monitoring the situation, with talks of preventative antibiotics being dished out to schools across the country. Some schools across the UK have decided to close to enable deep cleans to take place. Words of advice from Public Health. Simon Bryant, Director of Public Health, has today, Tuesday, said, "While we know parents are going to be worried by reports they are seeing related to IgAS, invasive group A strep, the condition remains uncommon. Cold and flu-like symptoms are very common at this time of year, especially in children. Most will have a common seasonal virus, which can be treated by keeping the child hydrated and with paracetamol. Some children with cold and flu-like symptoms, sore throat, headache, fever, may be experiencing some of the early symptoms of scarlet fever. In this case, they will go on to develop scarlet fever-specific symptoms, including a fine pink-red rash that feels like sandpaper to touch, and parents should contact their GP. While scarlet fever can be more concerning, it is still usually a mild illness from which most children will recover without complications, especially if the condition is properly treated with antibiotics. In very rare cases, this bacterium can get into the bloodstream and cause serious illness, called invasive group A strep, IgAS. This is still uncommon, but it is important that parents are on the lookout for symptoms and see a doctor as quickly as possible so that their child can be treated and we can stop the infection becoming serious. Make sure you talk to a health professional if your child is getting worse after a bout of scarlet fever, a sore throat, or a respiratory infection.
This is an article from the Island Echo, read by Terry. Dental crisis on the island getting worse by the day, warns Watchdog. The Isle of Wight's dental crisis is getting worse day by day, a local health watchdog has warned this week. It comes as pressures increase and health officials have been urged to act now and not wait months to find a solution. An update and complaints were heard at the Isle of Wight Council's Health and Social Care Scrutiny Committee on Monday about the state of the island's dentistry. It follows the change from national oversight provided by NHS England to a more localised approach by the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Integrated Care Board, that's ICB. Jo York, the ICB's interim dentistry lead, said she understood the island's issues, but there were issues across the country the NHS England team were having to deal with. The transition was going well, Ms. York said, and they have been able to build relationships with dental practices as well as using local resources to answer the island's needs. However, she recognised the island had significant challenges which had been exacerbated by the COVID pandemic, including access to dentists and retention and recruitment of workforce. A previous attempt to recruit to a new, bigger island dental practice was unsuccessful earlier this year, so now, Ms. York said, the ICB was looking to do something different. She said it was a case of trying to make national changes as the main dentistry contract restricts new ways forward. A solution, however, may take at least 6 to 9 months should it need to be procured. But if the ICB could do something more innovative and work with local dentists, it could be quicker. Joanna Smith, manager of watchdog organisation Health Watch Isle of Wight, said the ICB needed to act urgently as the situation was getting worse for islanders day by day. She said, "Some islanders cannot wait 6 to 9 months when they have been waiting years. There is a huge backlog of need. Some people have never been able to access a dentist." Councillor John Nicholson, chair of the committee, said the NHS commissioners had managed to make it an appalling mess. It was resolved the committee would ask Isle of Wight MP Bob Seeley to speak to the Health Secretary Steve Barclay, requesting he look into the roles of those responsible in the NHS for the planning, provision and delivering of dental services due to the complete collapse of the existing structure for patients and dentists under their tenure.
Den reading an article from the Island Echo. Vulnerable residents won't be left out in the cold this winter, say local authority. The island's more vulnerable residents will not be left out in the cold this winter, thanks to a range of measures to help people with the costs of food, utilities and other essentials. Using its latest round of household support funding from the Department for Work and Pensions, the Isle of Wight Council will be investing more than £1.1 million in a wide variety of schemes and initiatives targeting households facing hardship between now and March 2023. The initiatives will expand on what was offered in the previous funding rounds to include support for foster carers registered with the council, unpaid carers, care leavers and people with disabilities. It will also widen the support available to reach out to those who may not be eligible for other assistance but are nevertheless in need. Councillor Debbie Andre, Cabinet Member for Children's Services, has said, "With the rising cost of living now widely felt by everybody, we understand that there are residents who are struggling but don't qualify for other packages of support and are at risk of slipping through the net. I am pleased to approve these latest funding allocations, which recognise and respond to the needs of island residents in this position, while ensuring continued focused support for the most vulnerable, who are undoubtedly the hardest hit. The schemes will be delivered across the island via the Council's Connect 4 Communities programme and will include food vouchers. These will be made available to eligible island residents, including foster carers, care leavers, gateway card holders and some people who receive council tax support or housing benefit, amongst others. Vouchers will be sent out to eligible residents automatically with no need to apply. Discretionary grants to schools. These may be used to help families with costs relating to food and weather-appropriate clothing. Parents can apply directly to their children's school for the voucher. Funding to support the Living Well and Early Help Service mobile hub, providing hot meals and a warm space for residents in need. Funding to Citizens Advice to provide help with fuel and utility bills. The charity will also use the money to provide a single point of contact for island residents in need via its Help Through Crisis helpline. It is anticipated that more than 200 households will benefit from this funding. Grants for voluntary and community organisations, as well as town, parish and community councils, to help meet needs within their local communities. Further details about how organisations can apply for grants will be released shortly. Funding to establish up to 3 new community pantries on the island. This latest instalment of household support funding follows the previous funding round, which ran from April to September this year. During this period, 33 charities and community associations used their community grant funding to support more than 14,000 households. One-off food vouchers were provided to more than 4,000 eligible households, and just under 300 households received help with their food and utility bills via Citizens Advice. The funding also provided ongoing support to Ireland's network of community pantries, which now have more than 600 members collectively. Pantries provide significant benefits for families as they are open to everyone, and in exchange for a membership fee, pantry members can purchase groceries at a much lower cost than supermarkets. Pantries can apply to receive support via the latest round of household support funding to help them respond to increased food costs and provide wider support services for vulnerable pantry members. Councillor Ian Stevens, Cabinet Member for Poverty, added, "As we head into winter, and of course the festive period, we know that people will feel the impact of rising costs more acutely. This ongoing support will be vital for vulnerable families during these most challenging of times. I would urge anyone who is unsure if they can access support to email connect4communities@iow.gov.uk. That's connect4communities@iow.gov.uk, or visit the Connect 4 number communities website.
Hi, this is Steve reading a story from the Island Echo, headlined 21 bed blockers sent to the mainland at a cost of £1.9 million. 21 islanders have been sent to the mainland for care at a cost to the taxpayer of £1.9 million due to a lack of care placements on the Isle of Wight. The mainland care placements were used between April and September to ease pressure on the island's adult social care sector and to make discharge easier from the island's only hospital, St Mary's in Newport. In recent months, the hospital has been gridlocked by bed blockers. Patients ready to go home were not able to leave as no care packages were in place, at times affecting whole wards, and in turn, there were not enough beds for new patients. The Isle of Wight Council says it had no choice but to send some patients with specific care needs to the mainland with their permission due to the lack of capacity on the island. In 21 cases, the Council suspended a longer, more cost-effective process due to the urgent need to take action, resulting in a bill for £1.9 million. In quieter times, the Council must go through a full competitive process, allowing multiple bidders to compete for a care contract. However, in these 21 cases, the system was bypassed and waivers were issued. Speaking at the Council's Audit Committee earlier this week, Councillor Chris Jarman called the use of waivers a crisis. He said the island had seen care homes closing recently and too few new ones opening, lengthening the problems. To ease pressure in the sector, £222,000 has been spent to increase home care capacity on the island by employing carers from the mainland. Councillor Carl Love, the Council's adult social care lead, said teams have been working hard to manage the pressure but are dealing with increasingly complicated cases involving patients who need greater levels of support.
This is Alison, Reading an article from the Island Echo entitled Changes to Planning Laws, Another Win for the Island, says MP. Mandatory housing targets have been scrapped by the government this week, which has been hailed another win for the island by local MP Bob Seeley. Mr Seeley, who has been campaigning for a change in planning rules since his election in 2017, has consistently opposed plans for greenfield development on the island, arguing that brownfield sites should be prioritised over greenfield, and that government-set housing targets should be advisory, not mandatory. He had also argued that targets were not evenly distributed across the country, that existing planning laws gave more power to developers than local councils, and that councils needed to be given more powers for compulsory purchase. Stepping up his campaign to change existing planning laws through the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill, Mr Seeley teamed up with former Environment Minister Theresa Villiers to work up some amendments to the bill to ensure the planning system was more community-led. Together, their ideas gained the backing of around 100 Conservative MPs, putting pressure on the government to act. This week, Michael Gove, Secretary of State for Levelling Up, Housing and Communities, has set out new measures to be introduced through the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill. This includes placing local communities at the heart of the planning system, including strengthening the government's commitment to build enough of the right homes in the right places with the right infrastructure, making housing targets a starting point with new flexibilities to reflect local circumstances, and introducing new penalties for slow developers failing to build already approved homes. Mr Gove has also announced the government will be bringing in new powers for local authorities to promote brownfield development. The government has also committed to launching a consultation on whether planning permission should be required for new short-term lets, such as Airbnbs, especially in tourist hotspots, as well as introducing a registration scheme for holiday lets. Importantly for the Isle of Wight, there are plans to ensure valued landscapes, such as areas of outstanding natural beauty, remain protected through robust national and local planning policies. On the flip side, onshore wind turbines are back on the table, with a relaxation of the rules. New wind farms would still be subject to local approval, though. Speaking about this week's announcement, Bob Seeley said, "I am delighted that the government has agreed to amend planning laws to put communities first. The changes we will see will mean the Isle of Wight Council will be able to take more action to compulsory purchase long-term vacant or derelict buildings. Housing targets will be advisory instead of mandatory. Brownfield land will be prioritised over greenfield. Developers who sit on land with planning permission will potentially face financial penalties for doing so, and the government will enable councils to crack down on cowboy developers. Many of these new ideas will be in policy documents by the end of this month. For too long, developers have had too much power and control over the system. Local communities are best placed to know where new housing should be built and how many new homes are needed. The top-down approach has not been working on the island, which is why it has been so hard to agree a new island plan. Now our council will be able to work together with island communities to give permissions that will ensure the right homes are built in the right places. This is another win for the island. The Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill will continue its passage through Parliament shortly.
Before we start the second part of the Talking News, here is this week's Society's News, the week commencing the 9th of December, and today it's read by
Susan
and Morris. The last swimming session is on Monday between 1:15 and 2:15 at Medina Swimming Pool. Swimming will resume on January the 9th. Please call the office for more details.
There is no yoga now until the beginning of February due to unforeseen circumstances.
Coffee and chat will be on Wednesday as normal. Come along and enjoy festive refreshments from 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m.
The annual story writing evening was a great success on Monday evening, and we would like to thank everyone who came along to support it.
On Wednesday, Millbrook House came alive with festive cheer. Members, volunteers and friends came together, and during the morning the annual raffle was drawn. Once again, thank you for supporting. This is a vital part of our fundraising for the year.
And looking ahead to the new year, we are having a New Year's lunch at the Isle of Wight College on January the 17th. The cost is £8 for 3 courses. We have only 50 spaces, so if you would like to attend, please call the office to put your name on the list. All members, volunteers and friends are welcome.
We are closing next Friday the 16th here at Millbrook House for the Christmas period and will reopen on January the 3rd at 9 a.m. You can contact us in an emergency as our telephone lines will be monitored.
And now we go on to our news items.
Solar farm plans are submitted. A neighbour who cut down trees to enjoy a better view of Wootton's countryside could now be overlooking a solar farm. Plans to create the Sunny Oaks Renewable Energy Park on land owned by Bridlesford Lodge Farm next to White Rails Road have been met with mixed reactions. If approved, the solar farm and battery energy storage could power 5,150 homes a year and retain the excess created for the next 40 years. Support has been given to the project from islanders, saying it would boost renewable energy production and would be built on poor quality farmland, which would most likely be targeted instead for housing. Whilst the Environment Agency had first objected to the plans, a flood risk assessment had been submitted by the applicant, dispelling its concerns. However, one neighbour said they moved to Wootton for the peace and quiet and cut down conifer trees at the front of their property to enjoy the view over the fields, now proposed to be filled with solar panels. Instead, the energy farm would spoil their views of the local wildlife. Other issues raised by the neighbours included the proposed CCTV cameras, no consideration of glint and glares from the panels into their first floor rooms, and highway concerns with construction traffic pulling out onto busy roads. Wootton Bridge Parish Council said it supported renewable energy, but was surprised by the Isle of Wight Council had not requested an environmental impact assessment, even though it could be the biggest solar farm on the island. Campaign group Wootton Against Solar Panels submitted a 143-page objection and raised points including the site being prone to waterlogging, which could lead to significant flooding. It contends the development would not protect or enhance the valued landscape or heritage assets. They said the area would be industrialised with another solar farm and cause degradation of the views in the area. A letter from the applicant, Ridge Clean Energy, has also now been submitted to the Isle of Wight Council, which attempts to address the concerns. It says the development is robust in its design and comprehensive in the benefits it would deliver. Comments on the application have now closed, but the Isle of Wight Council is yet to determine the application.
Work starting on ground clearance. Godshill residents have been told developers have not jumped the gun on preparations for a major housing development in the village. Scotland Farm, near Yarborough Close, has been earmarked for development since 2004, when approval was first given for a nursing home and 94 care cottages. But now, nearly 20 years later, work is finally starting. Now, up to 107 1, 2, 3 and 4 beds homes could be built on the site by Captiva Homes, and a decision on permission from the Isle of Wight Council is said to be imminent. Residents worried buildings have been demolished, greenery cleared, and a site office is installed without permission. Captiva, however, has confirmed work is being carried out under existing permission granted for the site. A spokesman for the developer said it currently awaits a decision on its application, so no houses can be built. It is not the only concern Godshill residents have had about the site, as revisions to some of the highway plans have been made without permission and publication, other than on the council's planning portal. In a comment to the Isle of Wight Council, Godshill Parish Council said there had been more than 30 revisions, but they were not noted on the weekly planning listed, which would have triggered public scrutiny. It said residents would be unaware of the revisions unless they regularly checked the application. It did not seem like fair opportunity had been given to comment on the revisions, the parish council said, especially given the large-scale nature impact of development and the strength of local opposition to it. It requested the revisions were fully advertised before a decision was made. An Isle of Wight Council spokesperson said the changes to the application were publicised on the press list as they were considered to be minor in nature or lesser than the original submitted. Captiva said the revisions had not made any material changes to the plans, but they were available on the planning portal for anyone to review. A Captiva spokesman said they were very conscious of the current housing crisis on the island, and the plans, if approved, would provide much needed properties and affordable homes. They said their goal was to deliver the properties as quickly as possible.
New organisers to run festival. It seemed the popular Bryston Christmas Tree Festival wouldn't be able to continue in its usual format when the organiser stepped down after 2 decades. Chris Goodman bowed out and Isle of Wight Pearl stepped in to run a smaller scale event at its Military Road site. But 2 women have now stepped forward to take the helm from 2023 and return the festival in all its glory to the village. New organisers Emily Waters and Diane Woodhouse will be filling the big Christmas boots of Chris. Emily runs Little Loon events and brings experience in events management. Diane comes from a background in sales and events with the Isle of Wight Council. They share a love of all things Christmas. They said, "We are both incredibly excited to be taking on this island-grown event which benefits many local charities and good causes. We look forward to joining forces with Lizzie Wade and the team at Isle of Wight Pearl, who have kept the lights on and hosted the mini-festival, which has swollen to around 70 trees this year." Chris said he was confident that the future of the festival is in good hands. This year's festival is open daily from 10 a.m. until 4 p.m. until January the 4th.
Spirit of Carnival Awards celebrated. The Spirit of the Carnival Award made its return this year, created by Isle of Wight pubs to support traditional island carnivals. To be eligible for a prize, entries needed to have taken part in both Ride's main carnival and Illuminated Carnival. Green-Time, the Land of Butterflies, qualified as one of the 12 entries to be judged for the award by Ride Carnival Committee and secured first place. Knit Cook and 14 glittery butterfly costume dancers all took to the streets of Ryde, and the carnival entry featured 6 different species of butterflies fabulously created by Gift of Nature. The Bargeman's Rest, Newport, the Spyglass Inn in Ventnor, the Steamer Inn in Shanklin and the Dairyman's Daughter Arraton all jointly funded the initiative, and 3 cash prizes were up for grabs. First place took home £125. Ben Matthews, judge for the award, said, "I picked the Green Time, the Land of Butterflies, for the group's members' enthusiasm, beautiful costumes and impressive lighting.
Mark Cox, Green Time project lead, said, "Winning the first prize is the perfect to a great carnival project and for all the Green Time team members."
Flats plans are submitted. A block of flats could eventually fill an overgrown plot on a road in Ventnor after a basic, in principle, outline plan for the scheme was submitted to the Isle of Wight Council. Land at 53 Upper Gills Cliff Road has been empty since 2015, when the original bungalow there was demolished. Since then, the site has become derelict and overgrown. Now, outline plans have been submitted by Peter Champion of Bognor Regis-based Champion Associates. The firm wants permission to build a 3-storey building containing 6 two-bedroom flats. Previous schemes have been approved for the site, including one in 2020 for 2 houses. However, they never got off the drawing board because of feasibility and land layout issues, according to documents submitted to the Isle of Wight Council. If approval for this latest idea is granted, other matters including the proposed flat's access, appearance, layout and landscaping would have to be agreed through a second future planning application. Ventnor Town Council has supported the application, but said further developments of the site will need to comply with Island Road's recommendations.
Bob goes west for general election. MP Bob Seeley is planning to stand in the new Isle of Wight West constituency at the next general election, assuming proposals to split the island in half are introduced by the Boundary Commission. A consultation over 2 new electoral areas before January 2025 closed on Monday. Mr. Seeley called it a wonderful privilege to represent the island at Westminster and confirmed he would put his name into the ring for the area expected to cover the West Wight and Cowes and East Cowes. A second MP would represent the Isle of Wight East. The Conservative said, "Whilst I am disappointed at losing the opportunity to represent all the island, the new boundaries mean I have to decide which seat I wish to be selected in. I live in the Isle of Wight West, so that is the natural choice for me. I will continue to represent the whole island in equal measures until the next general election. Even after then, if I have the honour of being re-selected and re-elected, I will work with the MP for the other constituency to ensure we speak up for the island as a whole. I made a promise to the islanders I would get better deal for the island. We've got well over 120 million of additional investments in the past 5 years. That includes a 48 million investment in the NHS, around 50 million for the Island Line and Ryde Railway Pier, nearly 6 million for a heavy lift ship crane at East Cowes, and 20 million for the Isle of Wight College. I made sure the island was a priority funding area for the Arts Council. We've got a roads policy unit back, and the government accepted my suggestion that it established an islands forum. Work with the previous council, we secured the future of shipbuilding on the island, ensuring we buy the Colombian Union Jack building at the price it could afford. We've managed to deliver a great deal to the island, but there is always more to do. If people would like me to keep working hard for the island, it would be an honour to do so.
Red Funnel announces price rise. Red Funnel has announced a substantial ticket fare increase, just shy of 10% on average across all of its services. The cross-Solent operator cites the impact of inflation, rising costs and a dramatic rise in its overheads as the reasons behind the price hike. Red Funnel has thanked its customers for their support and understanding as the firm continued to navigate challenging times. Despite these increases, we maintained our published rates and refrained from applying reactionary surcharges, said a spokesperson for the operator. As we now enter our annual pricing review, we find ourselves in the unavoidable circumstance of having to change our rates in order to protect our lifeline service and keep our business sustainable. Red Funnel is increasing its rates across all types of travel by an average of 9.75%. This is effective from tomorrow, which is Friday, for vehicle ferry bookings for travel dates on and after January the 1st, 23, and from January the 3rd for foot passengers. Foot passenger tickets will continue to be available at the current 2022 prices for all bookings placed before Saturday, December the 31st of this year, and will be valid for 12 months from the date of issue.
Hospitals saved a 100-year-old's life. An Isle of Wight family is keen to thank all those who cared for 100-year-old James Puddy, who was not expected to pull through, but who was saved by an urgent operation to reach his centenary. Last month, Mr. Puddy was taken ill, developing a heart condition with serious complications. Doctors feared the centenary would succumb to his condition, but 2 days later he was transferred to Queen Alexandra Hospital in Portsmouth to have a pacemaker fitted. On November the 24th, he celebrated his 100th birthday at the hospital, surrounded by his family and enjoying some cake. He was delighted to receive a telegram from the King and was soon transferred back to St Mary's Hospital. His family wished to thank all the hospital staff for the steps they took to save his life. Mr. Puddy was born on the Isle of Wight and grew up in Northwood. He has lived on the island all his life. He worked as a boat builder during the war and later became a school caretaker. He was always maintained an active, healthy lifestyle, growing his own vegetables and cycling around the island, meeting many people on his travels, including sailor Ellen MacArthur. But the last few months has been tough for him. He initially contracted COVID-19 and was admitted to hospital with pneumonia. He made a good recovery and returned home, but more recently developed a heart condition. He deteriorated very suddenly with serious complications. It was very touch and go, said his granddaughter, Marie. However, Grandad remained determined to reach his 100th birthday. I think his strength, determination, and incredible fighting spirit really stands out. He received exceptional care at St Mary's Hospital, and they made a crucial call to whisk him to Queen Alexandra Hospital for an urgent operation to fit a pacemaker. Without this, he would not have survived. He is now out of hospital and recuperating. We can't thank everyone involved in his care enough.
A warm space and a warm welcome are being offered throughout the winter in Sandown. Those facing the choice of heating or eating this winter, or those simply looking for a warm space and some company, are welcome. Christchurch on Broadway and Sandown Town Council have combined to provide a warm space for local residents on Mondays between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. Reverend Mark Williams said, "We recognise the rise in the cost of living and the other pressures on families and individuals, and are grateful for the support of the Town Council to provide a warm space for those that need it." Town Mayor Paddy Lightfoot said, "We have secured matched funding from the Isle of Wight Council and thanked the church for providing hot drinks, soup and socialisation for residents faced with rising energy bills and food costs. The church volunteers provide support and a drop-in facility with hot soup for everyone."
New move at the church. A new Archdeacon of the Isle of Wight has been announced. Reverend Stephen Daugherty is currently Vicar of Holy Trinity Church, Bembridge, and will remain on a half-term basis alongside serving the Archdeaconry and Diocese. He will work closely with Bishop Jonathan Frost and will hold day-to-day responsibility for the clergy and parishes of the Isle of Wight as the most senior priest on the island. Steve, 61, is married to Amanda, and they have 5 grown-up children scattered across the south coast. He had been ordained an Anglican ministry for 31 years, but also spent many happy years preaching and leading in free churches. Before he was ordained, he worked as a director of global information technology in an investment bank in the City of London. He will be licensed for his new role at Portsmouth Cathedral on January the 22nd. Steve said, "I'm looking forward to being part of the collaboration new team committed to the transformation of church and culture while I retain my roots as a vicar in the joys and challenges of parish-based ministry. I long to see people of all ages come into the Christian faith through life-transforming encounters with Jesus."
Island post offices at risk. 4 not-for-profit post office services on the Isle of Wight are at risk following disputed financial shortfalls recorded by the infamous Horizon Post Office IT system. During a 15-year period, more than 700 sub-postmasters across the country were wrongly prosecuted for theft, fraud and false accounting after incorrect accounting discrepancies were thrown up by the IT system. The scandal led to many being left bankrupt and in prison. Years of campaigning that took the toll on them personally and professionally. Now, Island Community Ventures, the trading arm of Charity Community Action Isle of Wight that took over the vital rural post office service in Godshill following its near closure in 2011, is facing a similar worry. They say it threatens both this and the outreach services they provide in 3 other communities, Brading, Wootton and Totland. In moves that mirror those seen with other such services across the country, the Post Office is citing discrepancies in the transactions, accounting and stock-taking managed through the Horizon IT system and is calling for a repayment of over £20,000. This comes at a time when the independent inquiry into what has been described as the worst miscarriage of justice in British legal history continues at the International Dispute Resolution Centre in central London. Director of Island Community Ventures and CEO of parent charity Community Action Isle of Wight, Mike Bulpitt, said, "We seem to be in a position where we are at the mercy of a computer system that is simply not working properly. There is strong evidence of its faults historically, and even in recent correspondence with post office staff, they have confirmed that they can't understand why certain things are showing or not showing in the system. It is also somewhat ironic that 18 months ago, with the support of our local MP Bob Seeley, we raised a number of concerns around service delivery on the island, which included being asked to operate with equipment that from our experience didn't work properly. Mr. Seeley said, "Island Community Ventures have been doing a fantastic job at keeping post office services operating in some of our smaller rural communities. I hope this issue can be resolved quickly so they can continue with their good work."
Fishing tragedy. Widow's tribute after accident kills father of 3. A widow has paid tribute to her beloved husband, who died suddenly and tragically during an accident while fishing last week. Steve Kitcher's family were left heartbroken and devastated by his untimely death last Thursday. The devoted husband and doting father to Charlie, Harry and Daisy had been fishing at a syndicate lake in Blackwater when tragedy struck. The 47-year-old died in his bivouac tent and is suspected of succumbing to carbon monoxide poisoning. The avid Liverpool fan was well known and respected throughout his career in the NHS, and his many hobbies, which included carp fishing, sea fishing, golf, airsoft and football. Those who knew Steve will remember him as the life and soul of the party, said his widow Michelle. They will remember his infectious personality, his competitive nature, outrageous golf clothes and wacky shirts. Steve was an incredible loving husband, father, son, brother and friend to many. He will be sorely missed by myself and our children. He will be in our hearts and memories forever, and he will never be forgotten. We are overwhelmed by the huge amount of support and condolence and thank everyone for their kindness shown. Rest in peace, Steve. You will never walk alone.
The Isle of Wight Council is cracking down on misuse of blue badges. Following training in the summer, the council's parking service team has begun introducing enforcement action to address the misuse of disability blue badges for parking. The first enforcement case has since been resolved and resulted in a formal caution and warning. The parking team worked with a senior criminal investigator and civil reinforcement officers from Portsmouth City Council who provided one-to-one on-street training. The training event was specifically designed to improve their knowledge and understanding of disabled badges and to tackle offenders who misuse them. An Isle of Wight Council spokesperson said this has resulted in a greater awareness of disabled badge abuse, which the authority is actively tackling. Working with the counter-fraud team, the parking service has also created and introduced new procedures and processes. Under the terms of a blue badge, it is a criminal offence if the holder or anyone else misuses the badge. Doing so could lead to a £1,000 fine and confiscation of the badge. Only the person the badge is issued to can use it, and it cannot be given to anyone else.
School minibus in road accident. The Bay's C of E's head teacher Duncan Mills has paid tribute to 10 brave children and 2 courageous staff members who were involved on a crash on Brading Down Road on Tuesday. 4 pupils were taken to St Mary's Hospital to be checked over as a precaution. The road was closed for time while emergency crews responded to the incident that also involved a car. Mr Mills said, while on their way to represent the school in a sporting fixture in Newport, the Bay School Primary School minibus was involved in a traffic collision. 10 children and 2 members of staff were on board. We are obviously thankful to the staff that attended the scene and those back at school for their calm and purposeful support they provided to the children, parents and carers. Hampshire and Isle of Wight Constabulary confirmed its officers were called out at around 3:40 p.m.
Police are seeking information after 3 sheep were attacked and 2 of them died. The owner believes they were attacked by a dog or dogs at their home in Norton Green in Freshwater. Olive and Mabel were set upon sometime between Friday lunchtime and Saturday morning. There was a lot of blood loss, so the owner believes any attacking dog could have also been covered in blood. The owner's friend, Maggie Cook, posted on Facebook, "They were just pets. A 3rd older sheep was hurt and has been patched up, but may well not survive." A Hampshire and Isle of Wight Constabulary spokesperson said, "We received a report on Saturday that around 9 a.m. that morning, 3 sheep had been found with injuries. One of the sheep had died and the other 2 were taken to the vets with injuries. A 2nd sheep was subsequently euthanised by the vets. Anyone who witnessed how the animals became injured or has any information is encouraged to contact police on 101, quoting 4422 0489 729.
Newport Stadium work could start in March. Supporters of Newport Football Club have been given fresh hope work to start the stalled project to build a new stadium at Whippingham could get underway in March. But many fans fear further delays could see its demise and the break-up of a promising Wessex team. At an open meeting at Newport's Castle Inn on Monday, fans were told by the latest from the club's former chairman Tony Wake, spearheading the project for developers South Coast Leisure. He said work starting at the racecourse on the Newport's outskirts was tied into finance generated from the selling units at a new retail park at the former St George's Park site in Newport. Planning permission for the retail park and football ground is already granted, but SCL are waiting on scores of planning conditions to get signed off by the Isle of Wight Council before diggers are seen at either site. Mr. Wake, an SCL director, said he was hopeful enough conditions could be signed off by mid-January to ensure work starts at the racecourse in March. This would include a temporary road for construction traffic, the foundations and shell of a new clubhouse, and a plateau for the new 1.1 million plus artificial pitch. The Football Foundation had already pledged $300,000 towards the 3G pitch, but amid delays the cost has gone up, with a fresh quote needed. Mr. Wake, who repeatedly told fans promises could not be made, said the club was not in charge of its own destiny, but kept his fingers crossed to have the conditions signed off after Christmas. We want to start as soon as we can. Starting in March would mean we wouldn't have the facility completed until September. If it were to overrun, I hope the Wessex League can make concessions to allow Newport to play away games starting next season. Newport manager Steve Brougham cut a frustrated figure. The frustration is we can't build this football club until the pitch is done, to provide a base to work from, he said. You can't plan anything, we can't even get a reserve side up. Fans at the meeting also expressed fears Brougham's promising settled team may dismantle if no progress is made this season. To register for the FA Cup and FA Vase, the club must meet next year's March the 31st deadline. To guarantee their spots amid further delays, a ground share backup plan was suggested.
Survivor of prostate cancer speaks out. Graham Smith counts himself as a lucky man. When he suspected a problem with his prostate, he was initially told his PSA test was within safe guidelines, so not to worry. He went to a mainland private consultant for a second opinion, and he confirmed aggressive prostate cancer. Graham from Gunville Road, Newport, had an MRI test, then a biopsy, and underwent an operation in March to remove his prostate gland. The 66-year-old former banking and insurance worker has since been given the all clear. He is now in good health and is back enjoying his retirement with his loving wife, Rita. He is even back volunteering at the Isle of Wight Steam Railway. Rita said this and the loss of well-known broadcaster Bill Turnbull to the disease is a wake-up call that you need to be testing the progression of your PSA score over 3 years. It will be the real measure of whether you have a prostate problem. If it hadn't been for the Isle of Wight Prostate Cancer Support Group, the PCSG, member Alan Taylor, my guardian angel, we could have lost Graham through ignorance. We did not have the knowledge to question, but it was only thanks to the number of PCSG on the bottom of the letter that we followed it up. I adore my husband, and the thought of him dying of cancer was an anathema to me. The PCSG's extra support proved a lifesaver, and now Rita and Graham are urging men to be aware of the need for regular testing over a 3-year period. The support group issues cards to men who attend its regular testing sessions, and these help them record the increase in the PSA number. Anything over 3 is a cause for concern and further investigation. The sessions are held around the island, with the last one in 2022 being held at Totland Bowls Club, and hopefully 6 planned for 2023. The group stresses it works alongside the NHS testing instead of replacing it, and NHS professionals such as phlebotomists are always present at its testing days. Alan Taylor told the county press, "There is so much people don't know, and every time I meet a man over the age of 45, I ask him whether he has been tested." We also talk to the wives and partners, as women in the family are genetically susceptible to breast cancer if their fathers have prostate cancer. And women are much more amenable to discussing prostate problems, whereas men are prone to be macho or in denial about it.
Council tax increase likely for residents. Sandown residents are likely to face a rise in town council for the second time in 4 years. It follows a consultation with residents to see what their priorities were and how the Town Council could take those forward. At a meeting last week, Sandown Town Council heard a number of significant issues would impact its budget next year, including the ongoing damage caused by antisocial behaviour, increasing energy costs, the cost of living crisis, and taking on services from the Isle of Wight Council. Councillor Debbie Andrew said the council would need to be mindful of the situation, but in principle it was not good practice to keep the percept the same. Deputy Mayor Council Alec Lightfoot said no increase to the percept would mean the Town Council would effectively have to reduce, cut and close services when it feels like they are gaining some momentum. He felt if the council were to progress any projects next year, a budget needed to be prepared with a higher increase. The council's clerk will now prepare 2 proposed budgets for next year. Option 1 will be precept increase in line with rising costs and impacts on services. Option 2 is a percept increase at all greater level to cover all costs, pressures and meet residents' priorities. The final budget, an increase of council tax, won't be set until its February meeting and will come into force in April. Councillors will be briefed on the budgets in January and made aware of any potential impacts the Isle of Wight's council's decisions may have. The Town Council has highlighted projects for the Yaverland toilets and Pier Street toilets, but they would need to be funded through a loan from the Public Works Loan Board. In the last 3 years, Sandown residents have only seen their percept increase once. From April this year, it rose by 5%, which was an extra £6.80 a year or 13p a week for the average Band D taxpayer.
Mystery future of school building. With the school leaving Yarmouth for the last time at the end of this term, residents have expressed anger as the future of the Yarmouth site remains a mystery. At a meeting this week, residents said they felt utterly let down over its lost school building as the children and staff of Yarmouth CE Primary move out at the end of this month. They will move to their new government-funded school in Freshwater, but leave the existing building on Mill Road empty. The Isle of Wight Council said the site will be marketed in the new year, but it did not have any plans for it. The council said it would only be sold after discussions with town councillors and representatives. Steve Cowley, former mayor of Yarmouth, said residents were angry with the way they have been treated and asked Isle of Wight councillors to work with the community to save the site for educational purposes. A member of the public said he felt utterly let down by the Isle of Wight Council and the need to sell for the biggest profit was disgusting. He said, "I hope we can produce something good out of what is already a sad loss and a sad day when the school closes. We need this facility. Yarmouth has very little, and yet it is a centre of extraordinary history and community." A list of questions was taken away from the meeting, which will now be put to the Isle of Wight Council, and an invitation was extended to Wendy Pereira, Isle of Wight Council Chief Executive, to come to the next meeting. Councillor Peter Spink said council officers were supposed to attend the meeting, but were told not to come, and he would be seeking a written answer for the people of Yarmouth as to why. Yarmouth Town Council to set up a working party to monitor the situation and collate ways the site could be used. The Town Council has already submitted an application to the Isle of Wight Council to make it an asset of community value. It was requested the decision on whether to make the site a community asset to be held independently, as the Isle of Wight Council had a conflict of interest.
Now we are moving on to memories. Drunken tales from those drinking spirits and ales at island pubs.
At the turn of the last century, a lot of people had a drink problem. They couldn't get enough of it, and when they did, for some of it meant a visit to court. In September 1889, James Gustar, a cow's butcher, was charged with running an unlicensed slaughterhouse. In court, Mr. Gustar's friend, Moth, the slaughterman, spoke in his defence, or tried to. As the county press reported, Moth saluted the bench, wished them a happy new year, and hoped they long might reign. Taking up the Bible, he expressed a love for it and said he meant to give it a good long kiss, which he proceeded to do. He was ordered to stand down as too tipsy to give evidence, which he did, after saluting the bench with comic gravity. Mr. Gustar was fined £5. When Henry Wolfe tried to sell fish to Christmas shoppers in Ryde High Street one evening in 1902, he ended up charged with loitering on the footway. P.C. Dennis told the court that Henry was in the street with the crowd around him. He was the worse for drink and was singing and calling attention to his show in language which was not very choice, calling out, "What do you think of my show?" I told him he was blocking the street, but he replied that he was the boss and should do what he liked. He then held up a herring and shouted, "Who will give me a penny for this?" He then got some bloaters and threw them about for people to scramble for, and he was not particular whose face he threw them into. I said, "You are acting very foolishly, Wolfe, and will get yourself into trouble." He replied, "When you are talking to me, you are talking to the most sensiblest man in the world." In court, no longer the most sensible man in the world, Henry conceded that he might have had a glass and agreed he had 5 previous convictions. Now he had 6. Guilty. Fined 10 shillings. In 1912, Edward Groves, labourer of East Cowes, was charged with disorderly behaviour. He didn't do himself any favours by arriving at court drunk. Defendant shouting, "I am not drunk, sir. I guarantee I am not. Did you ever see a man drunk standing as I am? I can stand on my head. A drunken man cannot stand the same as a mackerel. I like a mackerel when he is fresh. I am an honest man. Look at my honest blue eyes." Superintendent Galloway, to the sergeant, "Take him out and charge him with being drunk and disorderly."
In 1907, Margaret Chambers, a married woman of Cowes, was also charged with being drunk and disorderly. Obviously not a shrinking violet, Margaret told the bench, "I dare say it is right, sir. I take fits now and then, fits of drunkenness." P.C. Chisholm said he saw her drunk, lying on the ground for 20 minutes and using the most disgusting language he had ever heard. The chairman, the bench, sentenced you to 7 days imprisonment with hard labour. Defendant, "A good job. Ain't I glad?" Chambers then refused to leave the dock and was removed by several policemen who carried her out of the court screaming. In 1908, Frank Dorr of Elmfield was also up for the drunk and disorderly behaviour. When his name was called, he shouted from the back of the court, "I am here, but I can't get up to the box." He was brought up by the constable and shouted, "Not guilty," in a very loud voice. He was told he must behave himself. He swore that he was innocent, and at this a man at the back of the court called, "Hear, hear," and had to be ejected. Defendant was fined 5 shillings, and then William Tutton, the man who had been ejected, took the stand. Tutton smiled and nodded to the magistrates. The clerk asked, "Is he drunk?" P.C. Broom, "Not yet, sir." Mr. Tutton was charged with having been drunk some days before. He replied, "That's bad, ain't it? A drunken man gets sober sometimes, but a fool never gets wise." Defendant kept up a running commentary while the evidence was being given and said to the chairman, "You've known me a good many years, ain't you?" When sentenced to 2 shillings and 6pence, he observed to one of the magistrates, "Ain't your head going grey? What have you been doing to it?" He was removed from the dock and left the court apparently very well pleased with himself. Here's to Frank, Margaret, Henry and Edward, not forgetting Moth the Slaughterman, for giving us a laugh over 100 years later. Cheers!
And now we move on to My View, and this is written by Jim Gibbons and is headlined Perceptions of Time Explored. When I was very young, cavemen, ancient Romans, the Boer War and anything before my lifetime was lumped together in my brain under the heading of old stuff. It is only when you have lived a decade or two that it spreads out, as it were, and one becomes able to remember what came before which, and if you know something of your family history, that helps. My grandparents and parents were born in the reign of Queen Victoria, and my parents married when George V was on the throne. It is interesting, though totally irrelevant, to note that Americans frequently use the adjectives Victorian, Edwardian and Georgian as we do. I was born during the brief reign of Edward VIII. I once saw pictures of Alexander Dumas the father and Alexander Dumas the son, and was momentarily baffled that the son appeared older than the father. "What's brought all this on, Jim?" I hear you bellow. It's because I am now the same age as my grandfather. These thoughts come to mind generally on the big family occasions, births, marriages and deaths, or hatches, matches and dispatches, as my mother used to call them. My sister died a little while ago, and I have been going through lots of old photographs and documents. I've also taken possession of some furniture, particularly a hall stand made by my grandfather. It is an elegant piece in a style which looks old-fashioned now, of course. Thomas Carroll was not a cabinet maker or joiner, and I have no idea whether he designed it himself or copied from another or from a catalogue. Thomas Sheraton, the furniture designer, came from our town, but I do know he was pleased with his work because he signed and dated it. He died when I was 5 years old, and I remember very little about him. But family tradition says he was good at everything practical. So it is rather surprising that a little before the making of the hall stand, he bought his 14-year-old daughter, my mother, an autograph album and inscribed a title page in beautiful calligraphy, in many colours with decorative garlands and ornate capitals. He must have spent as much time or more on that as on the hall stand. I wish I had a fraction of his skills. Thomas Carroll, I salute you. In my last column, I asked what character said, "I don't want to talk grammar, I want to talk like a lady." That was Eliza Doolittle, scraping the barrel to find a quote about hall stands, who wrote, "The rain it raineth on the just, and also on the unjust fella, but mostly on the just, because the unjust steals the just's umbrella."
So now we move on to What's On. This Christmas, everyone's favourite pantomime is coming to Shankling Theatre. Cinderella, the most charming of rags to riches tales, will be told by the cast of Spotlight. Cinders, played by Ermeline Story, finds the man of her dreams, while her horrible sisters do everything they can to stop her. Spotlight are well known on the island for creating professional pantomimes that entertain the whole family. They pride themselves on producing fast-paced, hilarious shows full of current songs, audience participation, special effects and surprises. With a brand new script every year, the audience can expect a traditional pantomime with a fresh and update twist. James Derbyshire of Spotlight said, "For those of you who are still not sure if you should book, one of the most common things we hear after our shows are, 'I didn't think I liked pantomimes until I saw yours,' or 'I was dragged along by my kids to see this and I'm really glad I was.' It is also the perfect way to start your festive celebrations, with seats still available for the performances leading up to Christmas. The run finishes on New Year's Day."
An Ireland-born woman will return to her hometown this Christmas as she takes on a role in a pantomime. Emily Abbott, who was raised in Newport, successfully auditioned for the role of Princess Apricot in Jack and the Beanstalk. The panto, put together by Made to Measure Productions, will entertain audiences at Medina Theatre this Christmas, and Emily will be returning home with the show. Emily said, "I am super excited to be back at the Medina this year for Jack and the Beanstalk. Growing up on the island, I have performed many times at the Medina Theatre in annual dance shows, charity concerts, and even another production of Jack and the Beanstalk back in 2013. I was only 3 years old when I first performed at the venue, so I have lots of special memories there, and I'm really looking forward to being back as a professional performer for some festive fun." Lee Redwood, writer and director of the show, said, "We were delighted to be able to find a local performer to appear in this year's spectacular pantomime. Emily absolutely blew us away in her audition, and we're excited for audiences to experience her fantastic performance live." Jack and the Beanstalk runs from December the 20th, and tickets are available online at the Medina Theatre website or by calling the box office on 823884.
And now we move on to the letters. Blame Bob for Council Tax Rise by M. Battersby of Freshwater. I was interested to read your article, 5% Council Tax Rise on the Cards, and that there is a 22 million funding gap in the Isle of Wight Council's budget. This sum almost equals 19.2 million, which would have been in the total island deal money at 6.4 million a year had Bob Seeley delivered on this island deal promise made 3 years ago during the run-up to the last general election. So what does this mean for islanders faced with a staggering 5% rise in their council tax? There are a total of 68,118 council taxpayers on the island. The cost of Bob Seeley's broken promise, 19.2 million divided by 68,118 equals £281.86 for every island council tax paying household on the island. When your council tax bill drops through your letterbox, think about how many hundreds of pounds less it should have been if Bob Seeley had delivered on what we now know was his total fictional island deal. Spoon to fool islanders into electing him as our island MP.
Joan Minns of Northwood writes, "Thank you for shoeboxes. Regarding the Ukraine shoebox appeal, thank you, amazing islanders. Jesus said, 'Ask and it will be given,' and you gave 711 shoeboxes filled with love. We all feel so helpless seeing the Ukrainian soldiers on the news and the plight of the people. This inspired us to do something. It was lovely speaking to so many people on the phone and sharing what lovely gifts of warm socks, scarves and hats you had bought, plus all the Christmas goodies. You personalised your boxes like they were your own sons, and we did also have 11 boxes done for lady soldiers. Thank you. £2,013 was collected from the £2 on the boxes, plus some generous donations. A big thank you to the county press for collecting boxes and loading them into my car twice a week. I have put a thank you board in Gurnard Church, so please go and look. You may see your name. Yes, Nigel has got a larger van and he leaves the island on Monday. Half the boxes will travel with Mad Aid to Moldova, and from there Nigel will collect them and transfer them to Ukraine. Please pray for Nigel to have a safe journey. You will be able to follow his journey on Facebook. Search for Nigel Watson."
Patient transport costs not as bleak as painted. From Melvin Hurst of Ventnor. I wholeheartedly endorse Michael Hopper's correction to the article by Rebecca on the 25th of November about the costs incurred by patients attending hospitals in Southampton and Portsmouth. I am a renal, not a cancer patient, and have often had to attend Queen Alexandra Hospital in Portsmouth. Whenever I travel on the hovercraft, not only do I receive a generous discount from the journey across, and car park fees can be reclaimed, as I related in a previous letter, but there, Waiting outside the terminal is the Daisy bus, provided by the Wessex Cancer Trust. If there are spare seats on the bus, the drivers, who are always helpful and courteous, are happy to take me along and bring me back. The only drawback is that the return service stops at 2 p.m, but there are several buses from the hospital back to the Hard that link up with the hover bus to the terminal, all covered by a senior bus pass, if you have one.
Brexit was necessary, but it will be challenging, writes Alexandra Hopkinson of Woolley in Bembridge. Graham Rawlinson may not have seen the BBC programme on European industrial development in the 19th century in particular, which was shown some time before the Brexit vote, but it made clear the benefits of less rather than more centralised government control. The EU is centralised in its approach and is becoming more so. Further, it seems to some of us that it is organised, at least to some extent, to benefit France and Germany at the expense of the economically weaker nations such as Greece. More worryingly, Germany's economic ties with Russia, developed under the aegis of Angela Merkel, have made Putin's invasion of Ukraine more affordable, while it seems that the EU is still insufficiently strong in its support for Ukraine and in attempts to bring reason into Putin's policies. The EU is inward-looking and the UK is not. The UK is more open to innovation than the EU. We may need economic ties with the EU, but we need even more to avoid being bound by stifling centralised administration. Brexit was necessary for the long term, but was certain to be economically challenging in the short term.
Harbour letter is misleading. From Jeremy Gully, Chair of the Bembridge Harbour Trust. Malcolm Thorpe's letter, County Press 2nd of December, is misleading. The judicial review case brought by Bembridge Harbour Trust against the Statutory Harbour Authority continues with the final hearing expected in the new year. It involves the use of harbour funds and assets that we are advised was unlawful. This is the only case this year in which the SHA has been a party. In this case, the SHA, a public body, declined to volunteer information to the court, despite a duty of candour without a court order. This trust applied to the court for a disclosure hearing. Ultimately, the SHA released most of the information requested, but only after many months. The last tranche was provided in November, close to the hearing date. The SHA have finally disclosed the information they did rendered the hearing unnecessary. Both parties applied to the court for the court date to be vacated. The next court procedure will be the overall case's final hearing. Outside of this judicial review case, the SHA continues to muddle its affairs with other companies the Thorpes also own. The conclusion of independent valuation advice is that £650,000 of SHA assets has been gifted to another Thorpe-owned company within the terms of the sale of the aggregates yard at Bembridge Point for £900,000. The SHA's valuable extraction rights were included, but the SHA received nothing in the transfer. The trustees, who, contrary to Mr Thorpe's letter, have contributed to the legal fees, will continue to hold the SHA to account in line with the charitable objectives of the trust and provide facts if misinformation is proclamated. The trustees of Bembridge Harbour Trust are Chris Attrell, Jonathan Bacon, William Bland, Jeremy Gully, Phil Jordan, Norman Marshall and Sarah Smith.
That brings us to the end of the Talking News for today, and so it's goodbye from me, Morris.
And me, Susan. The BBC In Touch programme follows, and the scaffolding news follows that.
BBC Sounds, music, radio, podcasts.
Good evening. Tonight, the football lovers of England are still suffused with a warm glow. Blind listeners in particular will probably have listened to the radio commentary but you could have heard it like this.
He's rolling into Foden down the left-hand side, a square ball right here for Harry Kane. Shoots, blasts into the bottom left-hand corner. And once again, the classic England counter-attack is mesmeric.
Well, you could have heard that as long as you have a smartphone. Not quite John Murray, but what is the advantage of an audio-described commentary? We'll be trying to find out later on.
Speech has been turned on. Total electricity used today, £1.25.
That's a new way for visually impaired people to keep track of how much their energy is costing. But first, unfortunately, some things just never seem to change when it comes to being dealt potentially life-altering medical news. Many of you got in touch with us in response to our discussion a few weeks back about how and if you can prepare for blindness. Just a few days prior to that recording, Pauline Mottram had been given the prognosis that she would inevitably lose her sight in what she felt was an extremely tactless way. Well, in a moment, we'll be hearing the hospital's response to that and indeed another twist in Pauline's story. But first, to a woman who 30 years prior to Pauline received the news that she would lose her sight in a similarly indelicate and abrupt way and, believe it or not, in the same part of the world. Rowena Thomas-Breeze joins us. Rowena, first of all, tell us what was happening with your sight back then.
I was diabetic, which obviously causes trouble, and I started having treatment for retinopathy, and they were lasering my eyes. I was going back, I think, once a month, and it was laser. And I said to my mother one day, I said, my sight isn't getting any better. Drove to the hospital and, like you say, very indelicate, just said, I'll give you 12 months and you'll be blind. And that was it, end of conversation, more or less dismissed, out you go, deal with it. And it was just the way it was said, there wasn't any discussion about nobody to talk to me after to say, well, will you be all right? We've got these facilities here. Do you want us to put in touch with you here? Absolutely nothing.
How is your sight now?
Oh, I haven't got any. Completely blind. Went very, very quickly. But, you get on with it, don't you? You have to. You've got no choice.
Pauline, let's bring you in. You told us about Rowena's story. So where and how did you two meet?
Well, it was following the discussion that we had on the In Touch programme, and particularly Amit and Marcia saying how meeting people who've experienced loss of vision really helped them. And I managed to find out about a local vision loss support group and went along. And there was this wonderful guide dog sitting under the table, a Wheaton Labby, and next to it was Rowena. She was so helpful and inspiring to me, seeing her with her iPhone and managing calls and going swimming and everything that she does. And it was thanks to the programme and Rowena that I started to feel less afraid.
But as I mentioned at the beginning, there's been another twist to your situation. Just explain what's happened to you only this last weekend.
Yeah, very, very bizarre. Now, I'm still reeling from it. I went for a second opinion, a private second opinion, and the consultant that I saw was a top retinal specialist, and he did a very, very thorough examination of my eyes, an OCT scan as well. And he looked at me and he laughed and he said, "You're not losing your sight. I am an extremely high myope." But he said there's normal age-related degeneration, which is to be expected. But he said I could very well retain my sight until I die.
That must be very difficult to deal with, though, because although it must be a relief to you, you've been given two completely conflicting pieces of information from two supposedly well-qualified doctors. I mean, it must shake your confidence in what you're told.
Very much so. I did feel very confident in the private doctor I saw. His whole approach towards me was highly professional. The trouble he took to explain what he was seeing and why he thought he was seeing what he was explained very thoroughly and just in common English as well. And he said he thinks that I'd been blinded by a bit of ophthalmic science as well at the first consultation I went to.
Well, As far as your original diagnosis goes, we did invite the Betsy Cadwallader University Health Board onto the programme. They run the Abergele Hospital where you were seen. We wanted to get some answers about the way you were treated. They said no one was available to come on the programme, but Nick Lyons is their acting Deputy Chief Executive. He told us in a statement, he said, "We're very sorry to hear Ms Mottram is unhappy with the care she's received. We're currently in the process of appointing an eye care liaison officer," they're known as ECLOs in fact, "who," he went on to say, "in future will be able to support patients going through this journey." And he said, "We're looking into this issue and we invite Ms Mottram to contact us directly through our patient advice and liaison service so that we can investigate it further and provide her with more support." Pauline, will you be taking up that offer?
I feel I want to, on behalf of other patients who may be following me, to save them being treated the way that I was. From my own experience, I honestly don't hold out much hope. I think a lot of it is saying the right things to the BBC. And I'm sorry if that sounds cynical, but that's my opinion.
Pauline Mottram, Rowena Thomas-Breeze, thank you both very much indeed. We're going to stick with this subject. Do tell us your experiences of receiving news about your vision. Now,
The England team in white socks, white shorts and blue anthem jackets, that's what they're called. And Senegal, well, look to be in all green at the moment, green socks, green shorts, and then green sleeved anthem jackets with like a dark grey across the front. So, dangerous position for a free kick, 15 yards left of centre. A line of green shirts on the 18-yard box down to my right in front of the south stand. Left arm raised by Jordan Henderson, who's over it. He plays a square ball to the right of the midfield, and then a ball down the left-hand side of the area. It's taken down nicely on the chest and volleyed across towards the back post. There's a melee of players and then hacked into the midfield.
Steve Corrie there providing audio described World Cup commentary for England's victory over Senegal on Sunday evening. It was provided by a company called Alan March Sport. They specialise in presentation for large-scale events, and the company director is, well, it would be, wouldn't it, Alan March, and he joins us from where else but Qatar. Alan, just describe how this commentary works and how people can use it.
What we've tried to do at Alan March Sport is to develop it into something as entertaining as the modern game of football is. So it's fairly quick, it's quite wordy. What we don't want people to do is miss any of the action, but we also want them to feel like they're listening to a bog standard TV or radio station commentary at the same time. We're trying to paint a picture constantly, and that's a hard thing to do because obviously a ball is moving. At this World Cup, it's being done by an app. You simply get a 3-digit code, which is ADC, and then you match that code on the FIFA interpreting app with the stadium that you're currently wanting to listen to. So, for instance, ATS would be Al Tamama Stadium. You simply type in the 6 digits all together, and away you go. You can listen to any of the commentaries. Yes, it's designed for those going to the stadium, but what FIFA have recognised is that vision-impaired people who want to watch football or want to take football in with a far more descriptive commentary should be able to access it all over the world, and people are, from my understanding.
But you do need an access code to enter into the app to get the audio described stream. Will that cost you anything?
No, like I say, if you buy a ticket to the game, basically that information is then sent to you by FIFA. But I think if you look out for social media from, certainly from Alan March Sport, from CAFE, the Centre of Access Football in Europe, a lot of those codes are sort of available online as well.
But if you're a visually impaired person, like I am, you do have to be comfortable using a smartphone, which I'm not.
Yes, domestically we look after 11 football clubs in the football pyramid, from Newcastle and Leicester in the Premier League all the way down to Wrexham in the National League, and we use a different set of equipment for our own domestic clubs. It's basically a wireless receiver. We find that easier. In larger events where they're expecting larger numbers, then they've obviously come up with a way of doing it digitally.
Are you trying to offer anything different to professional commentators? I mean, you know, I work for the BBC and I think we've got some pretty good commentators, the likes of John Murray and Ian Dennis. So are you competing, or is this just that you can be used when you're actually in the stadium?
Domestically, the idea is that as a blind spectator, you can go to the ground, but it's not just about having access to it as a tool, it's about what it offers as well. I would never sit in front of a room full of people and say that what we offer is better than the BBC. What we offer is different. What we offer is a little bit more detail. So if you're missing something in 50 seconds, is that fair because you're vision impaired? So the idea is that we're filling in those blanks. There was a lady who listened to our commentary of the Champions League final this year in Paris, and she was saying that the way that we audio described the fireworks display pre-game, she actually wrote to us and said, you brought that part to life. I envisaged all the bangs and whistles that were going on, and the heat, because of the height she was sat in the stadium, made her feel like she was a child again. That's the feedback that we want, and that's what we get, because then that tells us we're saying the right things. We're saying the right words to help somebody fill in those blanks.
Alan March, thank you very much indeed. So Alan, understandably bullish about his own product, but what do the users think? Well, I'm delighted to say that we're joined by Pardeep Gill, just back from the England match in Qatar. So, Pardeep, you used the audio-described stadium commentary, I think. What did you make of it?
I'm a great football fan. I've supported Leicester for many years, and I've benefited from the live audio description at Premier League stadiums, and it has been rather patchy. Since my vision has worsened, I'm now reliant on audio description, and when I got to Qatar last week, I heard about the live audio description, so I downloaded the FIFA interpreting app, and it was so simple and seamless. The inclusive audio description enhanced my matchday experience. All I had to do was listen to the commentary and then sing along to Sweet Caroline after the game.
Which, of course, was quite easy to do as they won 3-0. I'm assuming that you listen to radio commentary if you're listening in the UK. How does it compare?
It's on a higher level, I think. When I go to a football match, I'm relying on the ambience, on the atmosphere of the on-pitch action. I'm not really interested in the tactics and so on. The radio commentary focuses on the tactics and so on, but I'm more interested in the on-pitch action, and that was really what the commentators in Qatar excelled on.
Right. And I believe you're going back for the England quarter-final at the weekend.
I am, and I would just like to point out, Peter, that purely on an accessibility level, I've been hugely impressed from arriving at Hamad International Airport using the fully accessible Doha metro system and the accessibility features around the stadium and the Al Bida fan zone. I've been made to feel so welcome. On the audio descriptive side, one thing I would have liked is to have more separate audio description on the non-visual design and architecture of the amazing stadiums, because as you and other listeners will appreciate, they're all great in design, like the Al Bayat Stadium is a tent-like structure, but I would have benefited from that separately, but I will feed that back to the team.
Well, Pardeep, thanks very much for joining us, and let's hope we get the right result in the quarter-final. Now, as we've recently reported, being blind or visually impaired can all too often result in unavoidable extra costs. A recent RNIB survey on the cost of living crisis found that more than a third of visually impaired people go without essentials such as food and heating and are struggling to make ends meet. Consequently, anything which can help reduce living costs is well worth looking into. So when we heard about an accessible energy smart meter, we asked reporter Fern Lulham to look into it for us. So Fern, first of all, tell us about this smart meter and how it might help.
Smart meters display your actual energy usage in close to real time. That's all very well and good, of course, if the display is accessible, which until recently they haven't been. But now smart meters are available with an accessible in-home display, or AIHD, which has made the smart meter even smarter in its aim to level the playing field for us blind people. So here's an idea of what one sounds like.
Speech has been turned on. Total electricity used today, £1.25. Total gas used today, 87 pence. There is a new message from your energy supplier in your inbox.
Oh, we'll have to see what they want. Meanwhile, in my quest to find out more, I spoke to Philippa Brown from Smart Energy GB, which is a government-backed campaign, and I started by asking her what had inspired the production of AIHD.
Some of the research findings were that, 9 in 10 blind and partially sighted adults currently find it difficult to reduce their energy bills, but also 79% said that knowing how much energy they use each day would help them save money.
And you produced the meter in partnership with the RNIB. So what part did they, and indeed the blind community in general, play in that process?
Their team know the needs of the community, there's user-led design, and they've been integral in developing those additional functions of the accessible IHD.
Can you describe the meter to me, and in particular the features that make it so useful for blind people?
It's got text-to-speech functionality, navigation with adjustable volume, coloured LEDs which indicate levels of energy use, LED push buttons and large buttons for you to replay speech. It's got a large typeface and it's got the high contrast colour scheme.
And so how do we get our hands on one of these meters, and will it cost us anything to either buy it or even install it?
They're available at no extra cost. Everyone who is eligible should be able to get one from their energy supplier, regardless of whether they've already had a smart meter or not. Do speak to your energy supplier about your specific circumstances.
So, Fern, I mean, it's obviously good to know that we've been involved in the development of products. In fact, it'd be pretty stupid if we weren't, really. Have you spoken to anyone about their first-hand experience of using this?
I spoke to Zach Shaw, who is a visually impaired Paralympian, to find out how user-friendly he has found the AIHD so far.
Whenever I'm using new assistive technology, I find it a little bit nerve-wracking. But yeah, when I picked up this, literally within, I reckon, 20 seconds, I was really familiar with where the buttons are. There's a button on the top, it's very tactile. You would press another button, it would let you know you've gone to a different page. I'd say I'd be comfortable teaching this to my mum. I think she'd pick it up pretty quickly as well. It's weird that we're in a situation where you've been getting estimates or free monthly estimates, quarterly estimates for your electric, and it just makes a lot of sense to be able to know here and now, because we are living in a world where everything is instant. In my opinion, it's just the next step of technology to help benefit our lives.
So that was Zach Shaw, obviously a convert there. Fern, summing up of what you've discovered?
I think the AIHDs fall into the category of tech that helps us feel more independent, and that emotional confidence boost is always the acid test, really, for me. Part of that is the fact that smart meters remove the need to have an official, knocking on your door right in the middle of In Touch to read your meter, because they automatically transmit readings to the company. So we can save our energy for more important things.
I'd be surprised to get someone knocking on my door between 20 to 9 and 9 o'clock. Well, never mind. Fern Lulham, thank you very much indeed. Now, apologies for raising the issue of Christmas this early, but we do want your help with an item that we're planning for the season. We want to hear the experiences of visually impaired father or mother Christmases, either playing the role for your children, dressing up, etc., or perhaps in the wider community, because it struck us there could be some good stories attached to this. Charming, funny, embarrassing. Tell you what, I'll tell you mine if you'll tell me yours. You can share them with us either by emailing intouch@bbc.co.uk, or you can leave messages on 0161 836 1338, or go to our website bbc.co.uk/intouch. From me, Peter White, producer Beth Hemmings, and studio managers Sharon Hughes and Simon Highfield, goodbye.
Scaffolding and Skips News, week commencing 12th of December 2022. Newport area, 29 High Street, 11 St James's Street, Lugley Street. Santander, 26 St James's Street. Cherry Godfrey, 32 High Street. Newport Congregational Church, Pyle Street.
In the Ryde area, Jack's, 75 Union Street, 51 to 52 High Street, 71 High Street, 15 Cross Street, and 1 to 8 the Colonnade, St James's Street with Lind Street.
Sandown area, 59 High Street.
And in the Ventnor area, 29 West Street and 2 Durham Cottages in Beaconsfield Road.
And the Cowes area, 121 High Street.
And Shanklin skips 22 Spring Gardens.